You're watching Capitol View, Sunday morning talk focused on the political scene in Arkansas.
And welcome back to Capitol View. We rejoin our panel of not one but two freshman congressmen, Bruce Westerman and French Hill. Gentlemen, again, thanks very much. Want to talk Death Tax Repeal Act. You both voted for this. The benefit for Arkansans, a lot of folks say this is something that will just benefit the wealthy. And basically what this is, death tax, you want to make sure that you protect your assets once you pass on for your family. Some say with the death tax, what can happen is you can lose about half of that. Half it goes to the government. Everything you've worked for your entire life can go away. The benefits for Arkansas.
Yeah, I see, especially in the 4th District where we've got a lot of timberland, the death tax is especially onerous on large landholders and families that have been managing timber for a long time. I've seen instances where the owner dies, the heirs get the land, and they have to go in and really uproot generations of forestry management practices just to cut timber to get enough money to pay the taxes. So this, and another thing that happens, they'll partialize the land, which eventually leads to fragmentation, and you've got landscapes that are being disturbed. So it's not only an economic consideration from a forestry standpoint, it's also an environmental consideration when you see what these owners have to do at times just to pay the tax so they can inherit the land that's been passed to them.
I agree, and I think in small businesses, closely held businesses, we want the ability for families to build a business that they can pass on to their kids and on to their kids. And the death tax causes a family to have to spend a small fortune in buying insurance to offset that tax due at death of the founder, or it forces them to take out a big bank loan and leverage up the business, something that's not good in the case of a recession or a troubled economy. So the death tax is a tax on retained earnings that have already been taxed, not only by having earned that money and paid income taxes on it, but also inflation. So much of the value of somebody's company or shares or timberland or a farm in a family is really as a result of inflation 20, 30 years later, and yet the government's tax doesn't account for that. So I was proud to support repeal of it. I think it would be good for American business, and I think it would cause business to have more certainty in planning and growing for the next generation.
Goes on to the Senate. Looks like it's going to have a tough time over there.
Sounds like it, but so is everything else we've passed in the House. We've had a tough time in the Senate.
Business as usual. Business as usual, too, seems to be trying to bring the federal debt down. It continues to go up.
Yeah, and a big part of my first 100 days in Congress have been serving on the Budget Committee. As you know, we're trying to get a budget finalized by the end of April. We've already passed a resolution out of the House. There's a resolution passed out of the Senate. Now we're going together in conference to try to get budget reconciliation, which provides a blueprint for how the rest of Congress operates. So going through all those budget hearings, you know, I've been through all the numbers and the departments, and it's really alarming when you see how much money is being spent over on the mandatory side on cruise control, as you've heard it said sometimes. We're up to over 2/3, approaching 3/4 of our spending is all in mandatory social welfare programs and interest on the debt. Whereas we talked about the military earlier, on the discretionary side, it continues to get squeezed more and more, and less troops, ships, less airplanes, and highways and transportation. We need $12 to $15 billion per year to keep our Highway and Transportation Trust Fund up and running, but we can't seem to find that money, yet we're growing all these other programs at astronomical rates. So, you know, we're taking in over $3 trillion a year, which is an all-time record, yet we're still spending close to $3.5 trillion a year, and that's why we've got an $18 trillion debt. That's why we're at $280 billion a year of interest on the debt, and the actuaries say that by 2025, if we don't change course, interest on the debt is going to be the single largest expenditure of the federal government, approaching $1 trillion a year. So it's something we have to address. It's been kicked down, the can's been kicked down the road for far too long.
Too long, and something has to be done. As a banker, there must be some frustration on your part.
I just get the shakes talking about it. Yeah, I mean, we need to have a plan, and for the first time since 1974, that's a long time ago, we're going to start the appropriations approval process in the House now. next week we will start approving appropriations. That's a sign that both the Senate and the House, I think, are working in regular order to deal with spending. And we need a long-term plan to bring this budget back into balance and begin to pay off that debt. It's 100% of our economy, 100% of GDP, and that's too high. It's not sustainable, and it could lead to long-term financial problems for our country. And that's why Bruce and I are so focused on having spending drop and make the Congress, hold the Congress accountable for our responsibilities to spend money where we need to spend it, and reform.
This week, the military gave the go-ahead to hand out 2 Purple Hearts to Private Long and Quentin Exegula. Private Long was shot and killed outside a recruitment office here in Little Rock. Exegula was wounded and still lives in Little Rock, but the Purple Hearts both going to those men. This has been a long-fought battle, as it were. Congressman Hill, your predecessor worked on this, and finally we got this accomplished. This is a great thing for these 2 young men.
First person I called yesterday was Private Long's dad and had a good visit with him. And then I called Congressman Griffin and thanked him for his leadership for fighting for this for 6 years. It's perfectly appropriate to award a Purple Heart in a domestic act of terrorism. And that's exactly what happened at the Pentagon and at the Twin Towers on 9/11. And that's what happened at Fort Hood, Texas, and right here on Rodney Parham in Little Rock. And I was delighted that the Pentagon saw it our way and has made this award. These 2 fine young men deserve that recognition.
An absolute honor. And, you know, I think Will Rogers once said, write your congressmen. Get their attention. Even if they can't read, write them. But obviously, both gentlemen can read it. But Congressman Westerman, something you've done, you've got mobile units out there. You're opening up offices everywhere you can to try to get your constituents to speak up and get feedback to you.
Yeah, and I've got a very large district, Bob. 40% of the state geographically is in the 4th District of Arkansas. We've got 4 field offices, one in Hot Springs, Pine Bluff, El Dorado, and Ozark. And we're still as much as an hour to 2 hours away from some of the places in the district from those field offices. So we've been doing a lot of mobile offices. My staff are telling me that within the very near future we will have had a mobile office in each of the 33 counties that we're representing. And we do want to reach out and be the voice for the people of the 4th District. We want to get their feedback and their input on the issues. So you know, we're using the resources that we have to try to do that in the most effective way possible.
Constituents are important.
Yeah.
That's number 1, and we are both trying to live up to the memory of the late, great John Paul Hammerschmidt, who we lost a few weeks ago. As David Pryor said, he had the gold standard for constituent service, and both Bruce and I know that's the number 1 job as the representative of the people here in the state.
On that note, gentlemen, thank you both for joining us this Sunday morning. Appreciate your time and your service to the state and the country as well.
Thank you, Bob.
Appreciate you.